Okay, I'm going to talk about something a little bit different here. It's got nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with philosophy, ideology, um, gender, anything like that. It's a bit different from the things I usually speak on, and that's something I'm trying to do more often to introduce different things. Um, what I'm going to talk about is a subject that I'm very interested in, which is urban demographics. What I mean by that basically is population, specifically of cities. Now, I'm not talking about census population, for example, age ratios, gender ratios, ethnic ratios, that sort of thing. That's interesting, but I'm not talking so much about that. I'm talking purely about population. How many people live in a given city? Now, in the UK, we generally do a census every 10 years. The last big one was in 2011, and there was one in 2001, and censuses before that as well. And inevitably, every time there is some changes. What I'm going to do is show you my results. I've conducted a study on this, and I've used several criteria for my study. This is not for any commercial reason. It's purely because I find it interesting. That's it. Can't really explain why, I just do. There's something about thinking about a lot of people in a given area that's, I don't know, I can't really explain it, I just find it interesting. Okay, so I done the study back in 2011 and I printed out the results. Now maybe you can see that. I'll leave it there for a few seconds. Pause the video if you want. At that time what I'd done is all UK settlements which I established had a population of 100,000 or more. And I've amended the study slightly this time. Now in terms of my sources, I use Wikipedia sources, which admittedly isn't the best source, but it is the most easily accessible. And Wikipedia sources themselves generally rely on council figures and census figures, but they are subject to mistakes. So I try not to rely just on Wikipedia sources. I actually have A to Z maps, they're big fold-out maps. I don't want have one handy to show you, but they're big fold-out maps of our major cities. And I'll actually look at the maps and try to consider what a certain city encompasses and what it doesn't, in terms of the contiguous spread out area. What I mean by that basically is a built up area, a collection of streets that are part of the continuous spread of a city. Now this is not a simple thing, it's not as simple as it might sound, because different cities in the UK sort of establish themselves in different ways. What I mean by that is the various councils administer their area in a certain way. My city, Sunderland, for example, actually includes three neighbouring towns, which is Washington, the original Washington for my American viewers, Holt-on-the-Spring and Heads-in-the-Hole. They're two small towns. Washington's a medium-sized town. Sunderland city proper is then part of that as well. So the overall population of the city is about 285,000. That's a whole administrative area. Sunderland city proper is 173,000. Now I've worked this out from a decrease in the last census in 2001, which time it was about 184,000. So we've actually went down. I don't know if that's good or bad for the city. I don't think it's particularly good, and it would be interesting to work out the reasons why that is. But what I want to say is some cities like Sunderland, and Leeds is a very prominent example of this, include towns that are outside the contiguous built up area. Now Leeds is one I want to focus on. When we look at Leeds, there's even been claims that Leeds is the second city. Trust me, it's not. I don't know where that came from, but there is a compelling claim that it is the third city. The third city is always an issue of contention, but basically the claim that Leeds is the third city comes from the fact that the overall population of the city of Leeds, the administrative area, is approximately 800,000. However, if you look at a map of the area that covers, there is large rural areas, and it includes towns such as Wetherby. Now Wetherby, to me, is quite a distinct town from Leeds City. There's a considerable countryside gap between Wetherby and Leeds, and Wetherby's hardly a built up area. It is basically a relatively small market town. But for population counts, it is included in the city of Leeds. Therefore, when you see the official population of Leeds, and it's much higher than other major cities, that's somewhat misleading, because the central area of Leeds is therefore going to be a lot lower. And I've tried to take that into account in my study. So, if you're from that area, what I've done in my study is I have included Morley and Rothwell, which are towns that are just about contiguous, although there's a little gap between them. But I haven't included other places in the outlying areas. I forget some of them off the top of my head. But that's what I've done in the case of Leeds. Then in other cases, I've actually expanded the population to include contiguous areas. Manchester's an example. Now again, Manchester's a confusing one, because a lot of people think Manchester's a huge city because they're thinking of the whole of Greater Manchester. That includes large towns like Oldham, Bolton and so on. But then if you look at the official population of the city of Manchester, it's only about 500,000. Now, both counts as misleading. The 2.6 million figure refers to the entire conurbation of Greater Manchester, which includes large towns like Oldham, Stockport, Bolton. The city of Manchester, though, I extended that a little bit. I included, and this is just going from the top of my head because I don't have a map in front of me, I believe I included Droylsden, Urmston, Stretford, and large chunks of the Trafford Council area. The reason being that that is entirely contiguous with the built-up area of Manchester. There's no space separating it. Now, I also done this with Birmingham. In the case of Birmingham, I include Solihull, the town of Solihull, which, granted, is controversial, but basically there's some streets there, it is indistinguishable from where Birmingham ends and where Solihull begins. I also included Smethwick. The West Midlands is tricky because all the big settlements of the West Midlands conurbation, Birmingham, Wolverhampton, Dudley, and I lived in this area so I know what it's like, West Bromwich, Starbridge and so on, it's almost impossible to verify where one begins and another ends. Especially in the Black Country, it's very difficult. So, in the case of Birmingham, I've expanded Birmingham's population by about 300,000. Its official population is about 1 million. I've given it 1,320,000. What I've also done is worked out what the population of a city is in a given year, and then added on to that via the trends. So say, for example, this is just a random example. Say a particular city has a population of, I don't know, 179,000 in 2001. Then the census shows in 2011 it has 194,000. That's an increase of 15,000. So then, by that trend, I work out it's 1,500 per year. 1,500 people per year. And I work it out according to the trend, on the assumption that most places are getting bigger rather than smaller. So those are all the things I take into consideration with these figures. So I'll show you once again my study from 2011. The figures you see here will not be the figures that you see officially. That's because I've taken other things into account. Bristol is another example, because with Bristol I've included places like Kings Winford and I think it's called Patchway, and some of the other bigger sort of built up areas around there. What else? Nottingham, I've included Arnold and Carlton. Brighton and Hove is set as one city. So, in this study, 2011, I'll just read out the top 20 results that I've got and the population figure that I've considered. London, 8,280,000. Birmingham, 1,328,000. Glasgow, 797,000. Manchester, 721,000. Liverpool 638,000, Leeds 625,000, Bristol 598,000, Sheffield 591,000, Edinburgh 514,000, Nottingham 486,000. I'll just leave it at those 10, otherwise it'll take too long. Now those figures that I've just read out, you will probably not find anywhere. This is entirely based on the study that I have done. What I do is I take the official figure and I amend it a little bit, so I work out the trend since the last census, the nearest available figure, and whatever the trend is I add on to that. In the 2011 study, I also, for the big cities, I added an extra 10,000 people. My reason in doing this was to include students who are studying away from home, and I wasn't sure if the official census took that into consideration or not, but I've just realised that they actually did. I've also taken into account unregistered residents. What I mean by that is, for example, people who are maybe illegal immigrants, or people who are not registered in official censuses. But again, this is a very, there's no exact science on this, so it's a very loose speculation. My results, of course, will be controversial, and I welcome debate, but there is some I would be I would stand by. Birmingham is the second city, and I know that there's a long-standing sort of thing that Manchester calls itself the second city. Occasionally Leeds does, occasionally Glasgow does. Birmingham is the second city. There's no question about that, because every figure you will find for Birmingham puts the city much bigger than Manchester or Leeds or Glasgow, and the only sort of comeback that people who would support those have is that the contiguous area or the conurbation might be bigger than Birmingham. But I don't consider an entire conurbation to be the same as a city proper, and I think it's very important to differentiate between the two. I mean, in the case of Greater Manchester, I suspect the good people of Oldham or Stockport or Bolton wouldn't necessarily like being called Mancunians, but I might be wrong about that. Now, I haven't printed out my study that I've just done, but I'm going to now read out the results that I've got for that. And please bear in mind all the things that I've mentioned. So, number 1, London, 8,540,000, big increase. Number 2, Birmingham, 1,320,000, about the same. Number 3, Glasgow, 778,000, and I'm including places like Rutherglen, Bearsden, Clydebank, because they're contiguous. Leeds, 685,000, that wasn't an easy one, and that's a noticeable change. I've made Leeds 4, last time it was 5, so Leeds and Manchester have switched places. Manchester 680,000, Liverpool 648,000, I've included Bootle and Heighton with Robbie. Bristol 621,000, Sheffield 584,000, slight decrease. Sheffield's always been a city that hasn't had a major population growth, it's always been quite stable. Nottingham 527,000, Edinburgh 508,000. I should say initially I put Newcastle and Gateshead as one because they're so close, and very often they are modelled as one. For marketing purposes it's often called Newcastle Gateshead, and I had that above Edinburgh in this study, but then I retracted on that because both places have their own unique character. Leicester 493,000, Bradford 422,000, Newcastle upon Tyne 416,000, Cardiff 362,000, Belfast 359,000, Coventry 343,000, Southampton 312,000, Hull 301,000, Brighton and Hove 283,000, Stoke-on-Trent 276,000, Plymouth 262,000, the Medway towns 262,000. Now, with the Medway towns, I'm basically considering Gillingham, Chatham, and Stroud, and Rochester, because they're completely built up together, so I've classed them as one settlement, which is also how Medway Council sometimes classifies them. Reading 258,000, Derby 256,000, Wolverhampton 254,000, Milton Keynes 248,000. Northampton 219,000. Portsmouth 212,000. Luton 212,000. Aberdeen 206,000. And I'm going to take a breath. Okay, I'm going to read out a few more with the populations and I'm just going to read out the rest. I don't know if I'm boring people already with this, but this is maybe geared at people who are interested in demographics. I should probably have said that from the start. If you're from any of these cities and you have any questions as to why I've reached the population that I have, please feel free to ask. If you're wondering why I've done this, but this is something that I've taken an interest in for a long time. 2011 I also done a big study on world cities, and I intend to do that later on in the year. The top maybe 500 world cities, which took a long time, but it was well worth it because I enjoy this stuff. So to continue, 31 Dudley 205,000. 32 Norwich 195,000. 33 Salford 190,000. 34 Swindon 188,000. 35 Warrington 183,000. 36 Stockport 182,000. 37 Swansea 181,000. 38 York 180,000. 39 Peterborough 176,000. 40 Southend-on-Sea 174,000. 41 my city, Sunderland 173,000. 42 Oxford 172,000. That's one of the fastest growing cities. 43 Ipswich 170,000. 44 Doncaster 168,000. 45 Huddersfield 165,000. 46 Bolton 165,000. 47 Poole 162,000. 48 Telford 160,000. 49 Rotherham 159,000. and 50 Preston 154,000. Now I've included a lot more, but I'm not going to read them all out by population. What I'm just going to do now is read the other cities and towns that have made it to the top of, let's say, top 100 or top 80. So bear in mind I'm up to 50 at this point. A few things I will say too. There's a number of large towns that still don't have city status. Dudley, Milton Keynes, Reading, they're all large towns that still don't have city status. Luton, I think, is another one. Okay, so to continue, 51 Birkenhead, 52 Middlesbrough, 53 Blackpool, 54 Slough, 55 Walsall, 56 Dundee, 57 Oldham, 58 Maidstone, 59 Cambridge, 60 Newport, 61 Colchester, 62 Gloucester, 63 High Wycombe, 64 Lincoln, 65 Grimsby and Cleethorpes, 66 Chester, 67 Exeter, 68 Cheltenham, 69 Chesterfield, 70 Chelmsford, 71 St Helens, 72 Blackburn, 73 Basildon, 74 Worthing, 75 Crawley, 76 Bedford and Kempston, 77 Southport, 78 Gateshead, 79 Rochdale, 80 Eastbourne, 81 Wigan, 82 Woking, 83 Worcester, 84 Hemel Hempstead, 85 Mansfield, and that means there's 85 settlements in the United Kingdom with 100,000 or more people. 86 Guildford, 87 Darlington, 88 Hastings, 89 Watford, 90 Hartlepool, 91 Burnley, 92 Derry, 93 Bath, 94 Gosport, 95 Basingstoke, 96 Stockton-on-Tees, 97 Stevenage, 98 Harlow, 99 Wakefield, 100 Halifax. So that is our top 100 settlements. And I've included other places, but you know it's going to take too long if I read them all out. So, let me know your thoughts. Does any of that surprise you? Do you have any questions you want to ask as to why I reached those figures? You know, call me a geek, but I have a big interest in this sort of stuff. It's just, yeah. So that's it. Britain's top 80 settlements in the year 2015. Of course, I'll do this again in a few years and amend those results, contemplate those results. So once again, what I'm taking into consideration is population growth trends, contiguous built-up areas, and yeah, those are the main factors that I'm considering to reach my population conclusions. If you're from any of those places and you disagree with me, that's no problem. But I would say, well, provide a rationale for your disagreement. If you're going to suggest another figure, by all means, you know, I'm open-minded, but I would suggest that you provide a rationale for that. Okay, thank you for watching.